All right, welcome back to the Gurus. This is March. We have a special March Madness preview today with two college basketball sickos who haven't slept in weeks. I have Mike Testa and Adam Glick with me, fellas. Selection show's done with. We got our brackets in hand. How are we feeling?
I'm feeling good. This is my favorite time of the year. The bracket's out. I'm just like, I have to make a bracket. I'm looking at all these regions. I'm looking at who Duke got stuck with as the number one overall seed. I'm looking at the coaches in that East region: Danny Hurley, Mick Cronin, Rick Pitino, Tom Izzo, Bill Self, John Shire. I mean, that talk about a storyline region there. And then obviously you got the one seeds being so dominant this year in Arizona and Florida, trying to go back to back in Michigan. It's really exciting. Obviously you got Houston, the storylines there with Kelvin Sampson, and him trying to get back to a Final Four and a national championship. But this is the best time of the year, trying to fill out a bracket and seeing who you have cut down the nets in Indianapolis.
Yeah, feeling great as well. Kicked it off with two incredible first four games last night, seeing my alum Texas win on a last second shot by Tremont Mark. No better way to kick off the tournament. As Mike mentioned, a lot of great storylines to follow, to monitor. The top teams, can they stay dominant? Can they get back to a Final Four? We're about to find out. But waking up, there's nothing like waking up on the first Thursday morning knowing you got 16 games from the time you wake up until the time that you have to go to sleep. Just can't wait.
Yeah, so starting with the first region, I want to dive into the bracket. This would be the top left corner of your bracket. Watching these teams come out, I was like, tough draw for Duke as the number one overall seed. You go down, 8 seed Ohio State. They have Bruce Thornton, one of the best guards you've seen in college basketball the last 5 years. The 9 seed down there, TCU, they've been Jekyll and Hyde, but they've played up. They've beat a lot of top competition. Your 5 seed, the Johnnies, won the regular season and conference tournament in a major league. And the 4 seed, Kansas, they have the number one overall pick and the conference defensive player of the year in their league. So what do you guys think about this path that the committee has given to Duke? And do you like Duke to still kind of come out of the top half of this region and get to the Elite Eight?
I do still think it's Duke's region, but like you mentioned, Theo, all those reasons, this is a really tough draw for them. I thought as the number one overall seed, maybe they would get a bit of an easier 8-9 matchup. We talked about how bad the bubble was this year. The 8-9 teams, I was looking at like a Villanova who hasn't really played anybody on that 8-9 line. Utah State, who is also in only a one bid league, the Mountain West and the Big East both being so down this year. I figured those would be the two 8-9s possibly on Duke's line. Georgia, been inconsistent in SEC play. St. Louis has struggled on the stretch. I figured, of those 8-9 teams that, are in Arizona's region and in Michigan's region, I kind of thought they would give Duke those teams, but instead, they gave Duke, maybe two of the hottest teams in the country. Ohio State's playing their best basketball right now. TCU, like you mentioned, almost beat Michigan, beat Florida. They're playing their best basketball season right now with David Punch and Jaden Pierre and Xavier Edmonds. So that's not an easy 8-9 matchup, whoever comes out of that 8-9 winner, whether it's the Buckeyes or the Frogs. And then, like you mentioned, the Johnnies are a 5 seed, maybe an underseeded 5 seed. I mean, they won the regular season Big East title outright, and they won the Big East Conference tournament with Zuby Ejiofor. So if you get Rick Pitino and John Shire in Sweet 16, that's not going to be an easy task at all to get past that St. John's defense. And like you mentioned, Kansas has Darren Peterson. They have Flory Badunga. Melvin Council's kind of the glue guard that gets everything together with Kansas. So it's not gonna be easy at all. I mean, these are a lot of really good coaches in this region. I do still think Duke has the best overall team and can get out of it. But just in the top half of the bracket, you got Ohio State, TCU, St. John's, Kansas, and then we can talk about the bottom half. It's like, you got Hall of Fame coaches down there too with Tom Izzo and Danny Hurley.
Yeah, they did Duke absolutely no favors with this region. Still, I think they're a region to lose. I do think they're still the best team, and I think they will get out of here. But as Mike mentioned, with all those good points, Hall of Fame coaches left and right. You got talented players up and down this bracket. The 8-9 teams, as he mentioned, I think are the two best 8 and 9 teams respectively in this entire field, and of course they're matched up together. You got Michigan State, you got UConn, you got Kansas, you got St. John's. That was one of my biggest gripes of the selection show was St. John's on that 5 line. Big East regular season and Big East conference champs. I haven't seen that. Usually they deserve, I think, a top 4 seed, but it is what it is. I think Duke can still get it done and get back to a Final Four.
Yeah, so one more thing with the top half of this bracket. It looks like the committee, they're trying to set up Patino versus Self again. They tried to do this last year too. Calipari beat Self in the first round and we get that instead. I know these are two mid-majors. I know you guys were up late watching Cal Baptist. I went to bed. And Adam, I know you saw Northern Iowa in person during Arch Madness. So I kind of want you guys to give a quick breakdown of Northern Iowa and Cal Baptist, and let me know if you think either of them is live to cause some chaos in San Diego.
I do think Northern Iowa is live. I mean, Adam, you mentioned this during Arch Madness when we were watching it. They were an underseeded 6th seed in their own tournament because of the injuries that they had throughout the season. And then you saw they had 3 pretty easy games. They had to win 4 games in 4 days, but they kind of breezed through Arch Madness like no one's ever done before, winning 4 games in 4 days. Trey Campbell he's a 4-year senior at the program. Leon Bond, they got shooters in Hornseth and Schweiger. I think Northern Iowa is absolutely live to win a game. And, Ben Jacobson, the last time he was in the tournament with this Northern Iowa team was 10 years ago in 2016, and he actually did win a tournament game over your Longhorns, ironically enough, on that half-court heave from Jefferson. So I do think Northern Iowa is live. I think they're, that 12 seed, it feels like it's a bit of a asterisk because, like you said, they had some injuries throughout the year. And the Johnnies are probably underseeded as well, but it could be like everyone's so into St. John. It's one of those things where they get sniped in round 1 because of a team that, maybe is just, they're getting healthy, they're getting hot at the right time. And the Missouri Valley has won in March before. This is a conference that has success in March in the past. For Cal Baptist, I love Dominique Daniels. I mean, he's a guy, he's averaging 23 a game. He can absolutely turn heads in March. I just think Kansas has too much size. Like I'm struggling to find where Cal Baptist can stop a Flory Badunga presence inside. So I'm going to lean Kansas in that matchup, even with how inconsistent they've been with Darren Peterson and how many minutes will he play. I'm not going to pick them to lose in round 1, but I do think Cal Baptist, Dominique Daniels could have an absolutely electric game, and maybe that'll be an interesting game.
Yeah, I think Northern Iowa is the more live team here on the 12 line against St. John's out in San Diego. They finally got healthy, as Mike mentioned. They're the statistically second best team throughout the year in the Missouri Valley, despite their number 6 seed rank. They're the first ever Arch Madness team to win 4 games in 4 days. I was fortunate enough to be there for one of them when they waxed Illinois State in that nightcap. They are a really good team. They play the pace that they want to play. They're super methodical. They got really good guard play. They play really good defense. And Jacobson, he's a proven winner. He has been there a long time. Credit to him for staying in, I think, Cedar Rapids or Cedar Falls, one of those places. Northern Iowa's good. I think they're going to give St. John's a run for their money. It's going to be a low-scoring game. And as we know, one of the flaws of this St. John's team is sometimes they just can't hit shots. They can't hit shots from outside. And if their shots are not falling, Northern Iowa could be live to win this game. On Cal Baptist's note, I don't see it. Dominique Daniels is a do-it-all guard. He can get it done himself. He literally took over that game late in the last 2 minutes of that Utah Valley, WAC Vegas, late night DGen Saturday sweat. That amazing game was, but they just don't have a ton around him. First time ever making the tournament for Cal Baptist. Credit to them. Fresh D1 team out in Riverside, California. So what they've done is an incredible story, but I do think Kansas is going to overwhelm them with Badunga inside.
Yeah, want to move down to the bottom of this bracket now. Loaded coaches down here. We still got Tom Izzo, still got Mick Cronin, still got Dan Hurley. Final Fours galore. I've seen pretty trendy thing I've seen in these early brackets is having UCLA, who is flying all the way out to Philadelphia, might have to see the Statue of Liberty again. At least we'll see some sign of liberty while he's in Philadelphia. But people like that team with Donovan Dent and Tyler Bilodeau. They've been playing good ball. They've won some big home games down the stretch here. They beat Illinois. They beat Purdue. And then they won a couple games in the Big Ten tournament. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts on the possibility of UCLA being a second weekend team down there.
I think UCLA is absolutely live as a 7th seed to possibly get out of Philadelphia. And also, I'm talking more from the UConn lens of this because I think UConn, of the 2 seeds, has been the most vulnerable as of late. Like, who's heading into March with the most vulnerabilities? I think UConn's really struggling to score at times. I think, St. John's twice this season has kind of exposed some of UConn's weaknesses. And I think now that you get out of Big East play, maybe you can see a little bit more of that. UCLA, they haven't been good traveling east, but they did get a couple wins there in Chicago during the Big Ten tournament. And Donovan Dent is just a guard that I feel like is made for March. Donovan Dent and Tyler Bilodeau, really good 3-point shooter. Like those are guys, and they have some depth too. Perry and Clark and Booker. Like UCLA can absolutely score the basketball. And they're facing a UCF team in round one who doesn't really defend anybody. UCF is also another high-powered offense, but they don't really defend you. So that could be another high-scoring game. I think UCLA, if they can get one win out here in the East Coast, might be good. Might be good for them to face a UConn potentially in round two, where they do match up pretty well. I mean, they can really score. They can really put pressure on UConn's defense. And Mick Cronin versus Danny Hurley. I mean, who's reffing that game? Does anyone want to ref that game? He might have to get a pay raise for whoever refs a potential Mick Cronin versus Danny Hurley game, because there's going to be. I mean, I don't know if both guys are getting teed up, but they're both going to be giving earfuls to the officials.
Yeah, I feel like UConn kind of went through the motions, a lot of Big East play, and now they kind of have to ramp it up. But there is no greater motivator than Dan Hurley. But UCLA and UCF, both teams are very live to get out of this first pod and get to a second weekend. For all the reasons Mike mentioned with the guard play with UCLA, Donovan Dent, he's been there in New Mexico. He can get it done when it matters. He's a do-it-all scorer. Perry was really good in the Big Ten tournament. He was clutch at the line to close out some of those games late. The UCF, listen, I mean, back in 2019, the basketball gods were on their side. They're headed to the Sweet 16, and they beat the number one overall seed in Zion and Duke. Hawkins is a really good coach, very underrated. They got size, they got athleticism. Obviously, defense is their flaw, but I feel like a lot of these teams, defense is their flaw, and sometimes they can just overcome it with some hot shooting. So I do think the winner of that game is very live to beat UConn. I think UConn is the most prone in this region to not get out of the first weekend, in my opinion.
All right, and the trendy first round upset in this region is South Florida over Louisville. I think that line's already dropped 2.5 points since it opened, so people are betting the Bulls down. These trendy upsets, they can happen. I remember in 11-6, like everyone was on Loyola Chicago in that first round game. Like people didn't have them in their Final Four, but everyone had them in that game, and they did end up winning. So is this a spot where you're kind of looking to ride the trendy upset pick with South Florida, or are you guys trying to fade the public here?
I'm undecided. I think I'm going to take South Florida by the time the Thursday hits, and that is one of the first games. But man, both these teams have such good guards. Like Louisville has tremendous guard play. I mean, Ryan Conwell, Javon Hadley, Isaac McNeely, Adrian Woolley. The question is, does Michael Brown play? Because when Michael Brown plays, that's a totally different team. They've certainly looked vulnerable, and they haven't really beaten anybody of notice all year. And everyone's kind of like fading Pat Kelsey because he obviously did everyone dirty last year, losing in round one to Creighton, and then that was one of the more popular public bets of Louisville beating Creighton in round one. I believe they were playing in Kentucky, and they still lost that game. So, everyone's kind of like off on Louisville because they lost round one last year. But man, the South Florida team also has an awesome guard in Wes Enos. He can really do everything. He's a great shot creator. Isaiah Nelson's a 15-10 guy. Joseph Pinion can really shoot the ball. Oma Jaffo, C.J. Brown, like they have a trio of guards that really can play. And both them and Louisville want to play fast. They both want to play through their guard play. Louisville, Sanando Fru's been good, but it's not like they're playing, inside out. Like they're trying to run up and down the court and play through their guard play. And then both teams can really shoot it. So if you're a fan of guards, you want to watch Louisville and South Florida because you're gonna get good guard play from probably both sides. So I think I'm going to lean South Florida just because there's so much question marks with Louisville right now and the health and the status of Michael Brown. I know they played that whole ACC tournament without Michael Brown. They were able to beat NC State. They were able to beat SMU and then face Miami. And Miami kind of walked them down. So I don't know with Louisville right now. I have to see a little bit more, and I have to see if Michael Brown plays or not, and what he really looks like. But I think I'm going to lean South Florida just on the safer side.
Yeah, I'm all in on these Bulls. We always see a 6-11 upset, and a crazy stupid stat for you. The last 13 tournaments within the first 8 games of the tournament, a 11 or higher seed has won a game. So the Bulls are very live to win this. They have elite guard play. They're the best pound-for-pound mid-major that can match up with a high-powered team. And everyone slept on them this year because the American was so bad. It was a one-bid league from the start because Memphis and Penny Hardaway were an absolute dumpster fire. And South Florida kind of just said, you know what? Let's go out and kill everybody. And that's what they did. They ran through the American tournament. Credit to the American tournament. That's for another podcast. I love the format that they did to set them up to cut down the nets in a one-bid league. But Hodgin, also, talk about pride. Hodgin declines the Syracuse job. He is on top of the world right now. His dad will be there in Buffalo. I'm all in on this Bulls team. They have elite guard play. They can shoot it. I think they are very live to win this game. There's a reason why that line's dropped a couple points.
All right, now to wrap this region up, I want you guys to give me your Elite Eight pick and who you have representing the East in the Final Four.
So I have Duke getting past Kansas, and then Duke playing Michigan State, who I have over UCLA. So I do have UCLA knocking off UConn, but I have Duke and Michigan State once again in Washington, D.C. for an Elite Eight. If you remember 2019, this region, the East region, was in Washington, D.C. The Duke Blue Devils were the number one overall seed with Zion, and they got clipped by Cassius Winston and the Spartans. I don't think Jeremy Fears and the Spartans were going to clip Duke this time. I think Duke does get to the Final Four for the second year in a row.
Yeah, top half of mine, I got Duke as well, and I got St. John's escaping Northern Iowa as much as I want to take them live. I'll be on them at least spread out in San Diego, but I think St. John's gets back to a Sweet 16. I think they get by Kansas in that second round game. And then on the bottom half, I like Michigan State as well, and I have UCLA in the playing the Spartans, and then Michigan State moving on to the Elite Eight to play the Blue Devils, and I think the Blue Devils will get their revenge from that 2019 Elite Eight rematch. They get back to a Final Four.
All right, that's one down. So we're going to go down to the South now. This is Florida's region. Another region where you could argue they didn't do the one seeds a lot of favors. If you're looking at it, the 5 seed in their region and potential Sweet 16 matchup in Vanderbilt just beat them by 20 points on a neutral floor. And then if you're looking down to the Elite Eight, Houston is the 2 seed in this region. The regional final in this region will be played in Houston, the Sweet 16 and Elite Eight. So Houston should have some home cooking if they're able to get past the first weekend. So what do you guys think about this draw for Florida? I know they're the defending national champions. Been an up and down season with their guards. Where are we at with them at this time of the year?
I think they're the most vulnerable of the 4 1 seeds. And again, the 1 seeds are very good this year. But you mentioned the point about Houston playing a potential regional final in Houston. You remember now, Houston last year had to play against Purdue in the Sweet 16 in Indianapolis. So they've had the opposite end of this as well. So now Houston potentially gets to play at home, essentially in the Toyota Center. But I think for Florida, a little bit of a tough region because, like you mentioned, Vanderbilt's sitting there at the 5 seed, and Vanderbilt just kicked their teeth in the Music City in the SEC tournament. I don't think Florida will have any issues getting past the first weekend. I mean, Clemson's without their top rebounder, Carter Welling. They really don't have a point guard who can facilitate good looks for their offense. So Clemson really does struggle to score at times. With Iowa, they play very slow. And I don't think, as good as Bennett Sturts says, I don't think Iowa, has the guys around Bennett Sturts. And I like Tavion Banks, I like Fulk Harris, but I don't think they have enough depth to really compete with Florida up front in Florida's awesome front court. My issue with Florida long term and getting back to a Final Four and potentially winning back-to-back titles would be their guard play. It was really just not good enough straight up in the early portion of the year when they lost 4 or 5 games early in non-conference play. It's gotten better since in SEC play, but I'm still not there yet where I'm like, this is we're gonna get great guard play from Florida in this region. Like I'm not there yet, and I personally, I think you agree, Adam. I think that guard play ultimately wins in March, and I can't get there with Florida's guards. I mean, obviously they have the trio of guards last year. Now they're more front court built, and size does matter. I think they can get past the first weekend, but ultimately in that regional against potentially Vanderbilt, Nebraska, Houston, Illinois, their guards will have to play really, really well, and I don't know if I'm willing to say that they're going to be up for the task.
Yeah, I agree. We'll get into it, but they're my first 1 seed to go down in the bracket. And listen, a lot of Florida's flaws were exposed in the non-conference portion, and they kind of found themselves back in SEC play. But what we really don't know is how good the SEC is. They really struggled out of conference, so we're going to find out, put that to the test here, obviously, in this tournament. They could get that potential rematch that we just saw in Music City with Florida and Vandy in a potential Sweet 16 game. I do think they're pretty free to get to at least the Sweet 16. Iowa, Clemson, they don't have enough firepower for me to upset Florida. I do like Iowa in that 8-9 game. But there's a lot of good teams in this bracket. Houston on the bottom half. Kelvin Sampson will have the boys ready to go. And I think people are sleeping on the Cougars a little bit just because of how good that Big 12 was. And they kind of lost a lot of those elite matchups throughout January and February.
Yeah, I'm looking at this region. I have a pretty chalky first round, so I just want you guys, the guys who've been balls deep in mid-major hoops the last couple of weeks to try to sell me on a first round upset that could happen in this region.
I was looking at Nebraska Troy. Nebraska's looking for their first ever tournament win right now. With Price Sanford and Hoiberg, I think Nebraska does get their first round win. Troy's a good team. Don't get me wrong. Troy's a really good team. But I just kind of had to give Nebraska one. So I'm also with you, Theo. I have a very chalky region here. I mean, Penn can score. TJ Power had 44. And Fran McCaffrey knows the Big Ten. So maybe there's some world where, Fran McCaffrey now at Penn can, have some answers for Brad Underwood's awesome offense. Ultimately, though, I think I have a pretty chalky region here. I have St. Mary's beating A&M, so I don't even have a double-digit seed. I think the upset to look for here is another 11-6. I think VCU, especially without Caleb Wilson for North Carolina, they're so reliant on Henry Vasar. But the thing is with North Carolina, they don't really rebound the basketball. They give so many teams second and third chances at scoring. I think if VCU can hit their shots, obviously they're live to upset the Tar Heels down there in Greenville. And again, without Caleb Wilson, UNC is not really a 6 seed. They got a 6 seed because of what they did with Caleb Wilson. They probably would be a 5 seed if he was healthy the whole year. But without him, they've looked more like a 7 or an 8 seed. So this to me is more like a 7-10 matchup disguised as a 6-11. I mean, VCU won 16 of the last 17 games with Djokovic, and Terrence Hill Jr. is the 6th man of the year. They can really score and they have depth. So I think VCU absolutely in the first year of Martelli Jr. I think VCU is live to potentially upset North Carolina in that 11-6 matchup. Other than that, I think Vanderbilt's guards are too good to lose to McNeese. I know McNeese is fun. Everyone liked McNeese after last year. They're too deep as well. I think ultimately, obviously, Houston is not going to lose to Idaho as much as Idaho is a cash cow for some people in the Big Sky tournament. I can't really find anything else besides a potential VCU upset.
Let me sell you on the Troy Trojans out in Alabama. The Campbell brothers can absolutely light it up from downtown. I'm from San Diego, so I unfortunately had to deal with a triple overtime loss out in November, and then they backed it up with a crazy another triple overtime game against USC that they should have won on a ridiculous buzzer beater. They can play up to competition. They won the Sun Belt regular season. They won the Sun Belt championship. Obviously, with the crazy Fun Belt format, they got very fortunate in their semifinal and final matchups, played teams on 4 and even 5 consecutive days. But they're a very good team. Their point guard, by the way, Valdez, 6'7" point guard that can really get after it. Very good team in Troy. Scott Cross, their coach, they were there last year. They return a lot of their talent. Nebraska, they can match Nebraska's size, athleticism. They can go punch for punch. And this Troy team is, I think, very live to win this game. And the pressure's on Nebraska. They've never won an NCAA tournament game. So I do think this is going to be an absolute war.
Yeah, I like that. I think there's pressure on a couple teams in this region. Yeah, Nebraska would be one. And the other, I still think I'm going to pick them to get out, but you guys have to admit there's got to be a lot of pressure on Houston. They're to come back after losing the national championship in heartbreaking fashion last year. I think there's pressure on the veteran guys to get this done and get a championship. And then I think also when you know that those second weekend games are at home, I think that ramps up the pressure in these first round games. Like we've seen that before. I remember a while back when the Final Four national championship were in Arizona. There was a year Arizona had a good team. Everyone was picking Arizona to get to that Final Four to win the championship at home, and they tripped up in the first round against Buffalo. So what do you guys think about the Cougars? Do you think they're kind of like upset proof here based on their draw, or any chance that the pressure can get to them?
Yeah, that was that DeAndre Ayton team, I believe, for Arizona. I think that Houston's got a pretty favorable draw here. I mean, you're looking at a potential round 2 matchup against St. Mary's, whose defense is really, really good. And then A&M Buckyball. I like Buckyball, but I mean, A&M really struggled in SEC play when they started to face stiffer competition. Anytime Texas A&M faced a really good defense, they kind of got stifled. You're looking at St. Mary's here, who has an awesome defense, and then if they were to even get past St. Mary's, you have Houston and that Kelvin Sampson defense. So I don't think there's an upset here potentially. I mean, I like St. Mary's. Mikey Lewis and Morauskas can really score. Can Andrew McKeever, can he move his puppies? Can he move his feet in the pick and roll? Like, because Santa Clara did attack him in that WCC semifinal. But overall, I think St. Mary's has too many good players. I have too much respect for Randy Bennett to lose in round 1. I just don't think either of these teams, St. Mary's or A&M, can beat a Houston. And then once you get to a Sweet 16, Illinois, who everybody loves. I had a buddy text me yesterday say, this Illinois offense is Ken Palm loves Illinois' offense. It's like one of the most efficient offenses in the country. The issue is Illinois tough enough to face a Kelvin Sampson team with Brad Underwood? That's a matchup where I'm like, Illinois, do they have a presence inside? I know they have the Balkan block of Stojakovic, Ivisic, Mirkovic, and they have an awesome freshman guard in Keaton Wagler, and they have a senior guard in Colin Boswell. But I think I would still lean Houston there in that hypothetical 2-3 matchup if it does go chalky, just because I think they have a massive coaching advantage in Kelvin Sampson, and I think they have an equally as impressive freshman guard in Kingston Fleming, so they can kind of match what Illinois throws at them.
Yeah, I like Houston out of this region for all the reasons you just mentioned. We could have a potential Houston-Texas A&M rematch from a few years ago, that crazy round of 32 game that went overtime. I agree on St. Mary's. Randy Bennett really tried in the offseason to create a more athletic team, a more physical team that could match these high-power power conference teams. They beat Alabama in a scrimmage for whatever that's worth. But they just don't really have it. They don't go night in, night out in the West Coast Conference. That are built to beat a Houston-like team. I really like this Cougar team. I think they're very physical. They play really stout defense, as Kelvin Sampson teams usually do. But on Illinois' side, they just can't get it done defensively. I don't think they can match the physicality. They've shown that they can score with anybody in the country. They got Wagler. They got the Balkan block, as great as that is. But they just don't have, when it comes down to it, you're in a close game, last couple minutes of the NCAA tournament, can you get stops? And I don't believe Illinois can. So I like Houston in this bottom half.
Okay. Yes, so it seems like you guys both like Houston out of the bottom, but curious, it seems like you guys are a little iffy on Florida. So who do you have Houston facing in that Elite Eight game?
I think this is why I have a backup bracket. I don't know if Florida loses to Vanderbilt twice. Like, it's so difficult to beat an awesome team twice. I know Arizona beat Houston twice, and Arizona beat Iowa State twice. But I think with Florida and Vanderbilt now, Vanderbilt kind of punched them in the mouth. Can Florida respond to that? But it was such a lopsided game. If they are to face again, I would not rule out Vanderbilt. So I think I have either one losing to Houston. So I'm comfortable picking the upset here in Vanderbilt. If it is a 5 against 1 here in Vanderbilt against Florida, I think Houston comes out of the region. I think that Florida and Vanderbilt getting that rubber match will be interesting television. Ultimately, though, like I said earlier, I don't think Florida's guard play. I really like the Vanderbilt guards. Like, I think Tyler Tanner's really good. Duke Miles is obviously a senior with a lot of experience. Tyler Nickel can get hot from deep. I mean, Vanderbilt has some guards, man, that they can throw at you. I just think ultimately this region being in Houston in the South, I think the Cougars come out of it regardless, but I think this SEC showdown, potential rubber match, I think Vanderbilt can win again.
Yeah, we're not getting 4 number 1 seeds back to a Final Four this year. I think Florida's the first to go down in the number 1 seeds in this tournament. I like this Vanderbilt guard trio that they have. Duke Miles, very experienced transfer from High Point. He can get his buckets when he needs to. I really like this Doors team. I think Byington's a very underrated coach coming from James Madison. I like the Doors to win this game. I know that they beat them last week in Music City. I don't care that they're playing, within a week or whatever of each other. I just think Florida, there's too many flaws that are going to get exposed in this tournament that we saw in November and in December, and I don't trust Xavion Lee in crunch time personally.
All right, moving on to the West now. We'll start with the number 1 seed again. Up here is Arizona, who's probably looked like the best, most complete team all season. Really good 8-man rotation. Can throw a lot at you. The one thing with Arizona is they've had some high-profile games where they've shot really poorly from 3. They've still managed to win a decent amount of these games, but curious about what you guys think about their poor 3-point shooting. Are they going to need to hit threes in order to make a run here, or are they kind of just so good that they don't need it?
That's the major question for Arizona. Can they win 6 games in a row being so anti the 3-point shot? We know how prevalent the 3-point shot is now in NBA and college basketball. It's like the ultimate equalizer. And Arizona just doesn't really believe in the 3-point shot. It's not even the fact that they don't make threes. They don't really take threes. They don't attempt many threes per game. They are very get the ball inside, rebound, defend. And it hasn't mattered so far. I know UConn, when they went back-to-back, their second title run, that whole tournament, they really shot the ball poorly from 3. It's not like they didn't take threes; they just didn't make them. I think they beat Northwestern in round 2, having made. I think they were only 10% from 3. That game against Illinois, where they went on a 27-0 run, they really didn't hit threes in that game either. So it's one of those things where it might not matter if you're so good compared to the rest of the field. you may not need to hit that many threes. Ultimately, I don't think they have to hit any threes to get past the first weekend. I think this Villanova, they're the weakest 8 seed in my opinion. And then Utah State, again, only a 1-bid league in the Mountain West. So I think Arizona's size and physicality and defense can get them past Villanova, Utah State, or obviously LIU, Shark Tank. I think they can get past LIU without having to hit any threes. Overall, though, after that, you run into potentially a very pesky Wisconsin team that plays up to the competition. They beat Purdue in Mackey Arena. They beat Michigan in Ann Arbor. They beat Illinois in Champaign. Wisconsin can absolutely play with the big boys. So you may have to match Wisconsin from that 3-point shot. You don't want to get outshot from the 3-point line by like 21 points. That would be the ultimate equalizer. I just think Arizona is so good defensively, and they're the best rebounding team I've seen all year long with Krivas and Pete and Iwaka, Karchenkov, Burries, and then they have the senior guards in Jaden Bradley. Del Orso has really come on for them since going to the bench. I just think they're so deep. They're so talented defensively. They may not have to hit any threes to get to a Final Four. I think to win the national championship, to win 6 games in a row, you're going to have to eventually, get hot from the 3-point line. But their team is so well-rounded, it may not matter.
Yeah, I don't think they need to hit threes until a potential Final Four. For all the reasons that you just mentioned, they're just so dominant. They're so good at getting second chance points, as we've seen time and time again. Throughout the year, they have the easiest 8-9 seed lines, in my opinion, despite the gripes of the Mountain West misseeding that always happens year in and year out. Utah State, with the resume they have, I think should have been the 7 seed, but they're not that good anyway. They won't need to hit threes in that potential round of 32 game against either Villanova or Utah State. And I think Wisconsin, just interior wise, they just don't have enough down low to contend with Arizona, and I think they're going to defend Blackwell and Boyd so well that they won't need to hit threes if that's the potential Sweet 16 matchup, or even if it's against Arkansas. I think they could slow down Acuff. I really like this Arizona team. However, there are demons with Tommy Lloyd about getting past the Sweet 16. He's never done it before, so can he get over the hump this year? I believe he can, and I'm a huge Bradley and Barry's fan for this Zona team. I'm all in on Zona this year.
Yeah, so shout out to the people that got tickets to this first round site in Portland, Oregon. You're going to see Darius Acuff. You're going to see AJ DeBansa. So great matchups there. You got Wisconsin High Point. You got Arkansas, Hawaii. You got BYU, Texas, and then what, Gonzaga, Kennesaw State. Do you guys think any possibilities of any chaos at this Portland site?
High Point can score, man. High Point, Wisconsin, High Point can play super fast, and they can really score. I mean, they got a 6-year senior in Chase Johnson who's only attempted 2 twos all year long. So if you're looking for a Jack Golke potential guy who's just going to shoot threes the entire game, he's a 48.5% 3-point shooter, and he only takes threes. And Terry Anderson as well for High Point. Like, these dudes can score the basketball. They can kind of match Wisconsin, who really like to score as well. With Arkansas, I think they maybe had the best freshman in the country in Darius Acuff. So I'm not going to pick Arkansas to lose in round 1 to Hawaii, but Hawaii's got a really interesting defense. I don't know. I mean, Hawaii, by the way, the last time they were in the tournament, they beat Jaylen Brown's California Golden Bears in a 4-13 matchup. Ultimately, though, with Arkansas, I think even if they had the best player on the floor at all times, can they get enough around him with Trayvon Brazile and Billy Richmond and Malik Thomas and Nick Pringle? Can those guys be consistent enough for 4 straight games to get Arkansas back to a Final Four? That would be my big question there. But I think in these early matchups, High Point, Wisconsin will be a trendy upset pick just because both teams can really play and both teams can really score. So it might favor both teams. It's not a bad matchup for Wisconsin. It's just one of those things where stylistically both teams like their matchup. And then Arkansas, I think they have just the best player in this portion of the bracket here. I'm not going to take Arkansas to lose first round, but I think both of these matchups could be very interesting. I don't think there's going to be chaos in this portion of the bracket though.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would have liked Hawaii to have a different 4-seed matchup. I think they're a very talented 13 seed. Aaron Gano's done a really good job out there. Not easy, obviously, to recruit in Hawaii. Isaac Johnson's a really good player that they got from Utah State. They're very big as well. They can match kind of Arkansas's athleticism. Maybe not athleticism, but interior defense. They're just not going to be able to stop Acuff, in my opinion. And then on the 5-12 game, that would be the only one that I could see happening with High Point just because of their high-powered offense. I think Flynn Kleiman's done a phenomenal job in his first year. You lose Kez Giffa and Bodo, everyone's favorite player, and you're still back to the tournament on the 12 line. Terry Anderson can get after it. Fletcher can hit shots from downtown, and then, like you mentioned, Mike, Chase Johnson, it could be a Jack Golke type player. He will come on the floor and absolutely light it up from downtown. I just think Wisconsin will also be able to get theirs with Nick Boyd and Blackwell. And then a difference maker in that game, honestly, is watch out for Nolan Winter for Wisco. I think that's a very high scoring game played in the 80s, but Wisconsin is able to come out on top.
That would be my only question with Wisconsin is the health of Nolan Winter, because we didn't see him in the Big Ten tournament, but when he's out there, I mean, it's such a difference maker for the Badgers.
Yeah, need some help from you guys with the bottom of this region. It's just having a hard time talking myself into any of these teams. BYU, obviously a super fun team with DeBonsa, but they're basically a two-man show right now with him and Rob Wright. They don't really have anyone else that can do anything. Gonzaga all year, watching them, it just doesn't feel like one of the better Gonzaga teams I've seen recently. And then you've got Miami's the 7. I like what Jay Lucas has done. They haven't really shown me anything that would say they can beat an elite team. And then Purdue, who'd be the favorite down here. I mean, I love fading this Purdue team. I was fading them all year. They kind of lost all their big games this year. Their senior class, they lost all the big home games at Mackey this year. They did kind of redeem themselves by winning 4 games at the Big Ten tournament. But I'm going to need you guys to sell me on what's going to happen in the bottom of this bracket.
Looking for an Elite Eight team myself. One of these teams has to make the Elite Eight. BYU, like you mentioned, it's been a bit of a two-man show with DeBansa and Rob Wright. They don't really play any defense either. It's a little bit of the UCF thing in the Big 12 where they don't really guard anybody. They're really fun. They can score. But Texas is live in that game. Texas has the size to match up with BYU. The question is, can Texas slow down DeBansa? I think DeBansa is good enough to get you one game. Zags are without Braden Huff, I think, at least for the first 2 rounds. But Graham Ike, fifth-year senior. You got Tyon Grant Foster as a super senior. I think Gonzaga has enough experience, and I do this every year, even with Tom Izzo. I just don't fade Mark Few in March. I think he's good enough to get almost always in the Sweet 16. Last year they kind of got hosed with their seed line, and they had to face Houston in like Oklahoma City, I think, in round 2, and they almost won, but they were out as an 8 seed. But he always wins one tournament game, more often than not 2. So I think the Zags, even in not a very good Zags team, I think this portion is pretty favorable for them. They're in Portland against a BYU team that doesn't really guard anybody, or Texas who's really struggling to they turn the ball over a lot. And then down here in the bottom half in St. Louis, I think Miami's super well coached. Jay Lucas is doing a phenomenal job turning that team around. I think they only won like 5 or 6 games last year. Malik Reneau and Trey Donaldson, really good players for Miami. The issue is they just can't really shoot the basketball. They don't really shoot threes. Or they don't make threes. They don't make their free throws. They leave a lot of points to the free throw line. But Miami's such a good rebounding team defensively. They're almost like a Walmart brands version of Arizona, where they just rebound the ball so well and they defend you. But they can't shoot the basketball to save their life. And then they're playing Missouri in St. Louis. I thought that was a bad draw for Miami. I don't know how good this Missouri team is, but they're playing in their backyard, and I've witnessed firsthand how these regions where they're played does matter, especially if you have the whole crowd on your side. There's a little bit of home cooking there. So with Missouri, they're as a 10 seed. I think they're the most live 10 seed with Mark Mitchell, who's been playing really well. T.O. Barrett kind of orchestrates everything for them. Purdue, they have the senior experience, obviously, with Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, Kaufman Ran, Oscar Clough. But this Queens team is, again, they're not going to win, but I just think this Queens team is interesting. They got 6 guys in double figures. They got Nasir Mann, Trey Mann's little brother. Chris Ashby hit 10 threes in the ASUN title game. He might need to hit 20 to beat Purdue, but I think they're live. Yoav Berman. They got a pesky Queens team, so I don't think Purdue is easily going to walk out of this region into the Elite Eight, I should say. I think they have an interesting round 1 matchup. They should win, obviously, but I think Queens is good. And then Miami, Missouri, they have to potentially face a Miami team that's really well coached and that could really rebound the basketball, or Missouri in St. Louis. So I don't think they're like an easy sleepwalk to the second weekend.
Yeah, I think this is the kind of pod region, whatever you want to say, that it could be absolutely wide open. I could see a lot of different teams getting to a potential Elite Eight in this region. I like my Longhorns. I'm going to be a little biased here, at least to beat BYU. I don't think BYU can defend anybody. And I don't think they're going to be able to stop Tremont Mark, who might be a man on a mission right now after last night's game. Listen, and a lot of people, too, are going to be out on this Texas team because that was a disgusting watch. You would be tricked if you think that was the 11-11 play, and I thought it was the 16 versus 16 play, and Howard UMBC had more of the goods. But I do like Texas to at least get past that first game, and then looking down, I just have been out in this Gonzaga team. I watch a lot of WCC basketball coming from a guy from the West Coast. I just have not been a huge fan of this Mark Few team this year. Graham Ike is difference maker down low, but I expected more out of Tyon Grant Foster, honestly, being a super senior coming from Grand Canyon, where he took them to their first ever NCAA tournament win. But yeah, I'm just not a big fan of this Zags team. And then looking at the bottom, this is where the value is, I think, if you're a betting man. Like Missouri, Miami, I think one of them is live to win and get to a potential at least Sweet 16. Everyone's going to be in on Purdue because they won the Big Ten tournament. I've seen it time and time again that teams that win their power conference tournaments, everyone's so high on them, especially a Big Ten tournament, because that's the last thing you see before Selection Sunday. But as Theo mentioned, this senior class before that game, they've done nothing. I mean, just absolutely given you zero. Is despite them being there for their whole college careers. I'm out on Purdue. I think the winner. I couldn't tell you who's going to win that Miami Missouri game, but whoever wins, I'm taking them to a potential Sweet 16 and maybe just maybe an Elite Eight.
All right, yeah, let's get to it. What do you guys have in your Elite Eight in this region?
So I don't know if I did a good enough job convincing you, but I do have the Zags going to the Elite Eight, kind of just by default. Again, I'm with you on Purdue. I don't really love Purdue this year, and then Miami, Missouri. I just don't know who's going to win that game, and I can't trust myself to pick them to win 3 more games after that. So I'm gonna take Gonzaga to get past a BYU and then get past Purdue out there in San Jose in the West. To get to the Elite Eight, and I think Tommy Lloyd does finally get past the Sweet 16. I do have Arkansas facing Arizona in the Sweet 16 out there in the West Coast. I think Darius Acuff is phenomenal, the best player on the floor in that hypothetical matchup. I just think Tommy Lloyd is in that Arizona defense has enough to throw at Darius Acuff, and they can limit the others. I don't think Trayvon Brazile will be able to get off against that Arizona team with that size and that length. So I think ultimately Darius Acuff has to drop 40 to possibly beat Arizona, and he can. He absolutely can. That'll be a game that keeps Tommy Lloyd up at night for maybe a week straight in the lead up to that game. But I do think he finally gets past Arkansas, and I think that bottom half of the region is going to be smooth sailing after that for Arizona. I think if Arizona can get past the Sweet 16, they will get to the Final Four, and they will beat the Zags pretty handily out there in San Jose.
Yeah, top half of the bracket, I got Arizona versus Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin's going to get enough from their guard trio to get to a Sweet 16 and beat Arkansas and Acuff and company and Calipari. I don't trust Calipari in March. I do think this Arizona's team is good, and they're going to be able to do enough to get past Wisconsin. On the bottom half of the bracket, this has been honestly the hardest thing for me when I filled out my bracket, who I'm going to take down here. I have Gonzaga, and I have a Gonzaga versus Missouri matchup. I think a double-digit seed is live to at least get to a second weekend. I think Mark Mitchell's a do-it-all scorer. Like, I'm in on this Missouri Tiger team. A little home cooking, playing in Missouri, in St. Louis. I do like the Zags, though. As much as I don't want to pick the same teams as Mike's been taking, I do have Gonzaga versus Arizona, and then I got Arizona going to a Final Four. I just don't think Gonzaga has enough pieces to get to a Final Four.
Yeah, I have a Zag here. I think Darius Acuff, legit Kemba Walker candidate. Like I think he's going to take over. So I have Arkansas in the Final Four. I'm sure I'll see them in a close game against Wisconsin in the second round, and John Calipari will have a clueless look on his face, and I'll say, "What have I done?" But just off the stretch run of the season, I'm in on Arkansas. But yeah, I want to move down to our last region here.
Well, wait, Theo, who did you have in the bottom half? Do you have the Zags, or is it a potential BYU?
I have Purdue
Texas?
right now. I have Purdue, but I'm like looking at Texas. I'm looking at Missouri. I'm trying to find something to do. Adam might have just sold me on these Missouri Tigers. We're gonna have to think about it off the air, but
Possible all SEC showdown out there in the West Coast Regional Final.
But yeah, so we're gonna go down to the Midwest now. This is obviously Michigan's region. Talking about Arizona being the most complete team. Michigan probably the most dominant team all year. Did have some injury news at the end of the year. One of their guards, LJ Kaysen, out for the season. And they kind of had 2 guards with him and Cadeau. And now it's kind of just Cadeau, who I feel like they're kind of playing roulette with. They could see if he was good or if he didn't have it, they didn't need him. Now I feel like they kind of need him to be great. But what do you guys think about Michigan's situation with the guards and where are we at with Michigan heading into the tournament?
I'm with you. I think they need Elliot Cadeau to be great for 4 games. I don't think they need him to be great for 6 straight games because I think this is the easiest. I really think it's the easiest region, to be quite honest with you. I think this early portion here, Michigan, I'm willing to put a decent amount of money that Michigan will be in the second weekend. I don't think Georgia poses really much of a threat with them. They were so inconsistent in SEC play, and Michigan was so dominant with their size. And then St. Louis, while they can shoot the 3-ball really well, they are very tiny. They don't have the size presence in there. I know they have A10 player of the year, Robbie Avila, but Michigan has the size to throw at either of these teams, Georgia or St. Louis. So Michigan will be playing the second weekend. I did love what I saw from Howard last night. Shout out Howard. They won their first NCAA tournament win. I do think ultimately Michigan is too much for them as well. And then this 4-5, the 4-5 teams in this region, Texas Tech, without JT Toppin, it's going to need a lot from Christian Anderson, who also was dealing with injury. And then Alabama's without Aiden Holloway. These are some 4 and 5s who are very vulnerable in Michigan's top half of this region. So I think Michigan can get to an Elite Eight, maybe without Elliot Cadeau even playing that well. I certainly think they need him to play well once they get into the second weekend. If you have to face a Liberator Thylon or a Christian Anderson, he's going to need to match them at least, or give them something productive. And then I think to get to a Final Four, to get out of this region, you certainly need something big from Elliot Cadeau. And then the Final Four, obviously, that's where the big boys are going to be. But I think Michigan got the most favorable draw of any number 1 seed with this region and how it shapes up. And I do think Michigan has not a lot of trip mines here in this top half of the bracket, with Bama being vulnerable and Texas Tech having some injuries.
Yeah, I agree. I think Michigan got the easiest bracket of the 4 teams. They have a cakewalk, in my opinion, to at least a second weekend. As much as I really like St. Louis, they really struggled down the stretch. Shirts teams, even at Indiana State, seems like they kind of run out of gas in late February. They, if you remember, took some bad losses, and that's why they didn't get an at-large bid to the tournament back at Indiana State. They have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in Mr. Robbie Avila. They got Trey Brown. They also have Brady Dunlap that can really get after it from downtown. But as Mike mentioned, they just can't match the size that Michigan has with Mara down low. And they don't play a lick of defense, which doesn't help either. Georgia's same thing. Both teams can score. That might be the most entertaining first round game. That game could be played in the 90s or even the 100s between those two. So can't wait to watch that. But I like Michigan's draw here. And we'll get into this, I'm sure. But I do think of the 4 or 5 seeds, like these are the most prone or likely to possibly get upset in this region. So it could even make for a Michigan very easy Sweet 16 matchup as we look ahead in this part of the region. But I do think they're pretty free to at least make. I think that they're going to the Final Four, but they're at least free to make a Sweet 16 Elite Eight. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is with this region too, like Texas Tech again, Donovan Atwell can really shoot it. Jalen Pay's been awesome for them. But you mentioned Akron earlier during when we were watching MAC tournament. Akron's live as a 12 seed, man. Like they got Shama Scott who hit a big time 3 in that left wing to send Akron to the championship or to the tournament once again for the 3rd year in a row. Tavari Johnson, he's got tournament experience as well. Like Akron is not a like you could sell me on a potential Akron Sweet 16 run because like you said, if they can beat a Texas Tech potentially, Bama's very vulnerable. I'm not even so sure Bama can beat a Hofstra. I love Hofstra's guard combo with Cruz Davis, who averages 20 a game, the CAA Player of the Year. And then Hofstra's got a really dynamic freshman guard in Preston Edmeade, who I think, again, guard play to me is where you get your upsets in March. I know a couple years ago with Oral Roberts, he had the Max Asmus legendary Elite 8 run, or Sweet 16 run, I could say. So, there's certainly a world here where the 12 and the 13, Akron and Hofstra both, because of the vulnerability of Texas Tech without their best player, JT Toppin. And then Bama, it's just really LeBaron and Thylon. They're going to need a lot out of Reitzel and Sherrill. Without Aiden Holloway, I just don't know. And Bama plays the same way. And they also don't play a lick of defense either. Like this could be another one of those little pods where chaos can ensue.
Yeah, I agree. I like chaos in this region. I have the Zips of Akron in my Sweet 16, actually. Them and Missouri are, I think, the 2 most likely double-digit seeds to get to a Sweet 16. John Gross, he's been here before. They've never won a game. They've never gotten over the hump, but can they do it this year? I think they can. Texas Tech, obviously, they lack depth. They've had some injuries themselves. I like this Akron team, and they're battle-tested. I like teams in mid-major conference tournaments, as I see a cat on the screen. Hopefully the cat agrees with me. But I like these mid-majors that go through conference tournaments and they win wars. Like they go in fights and they find ways to win, because that's what March is all about. How are you going to win a game when it's close down the stretch? And Akron is very accustomed to doing that. There was a reason why they were the betting favorites to win the MAC over Miami, Ohio. This is a really good Akron team. They played tough games. I think out of conference they might have played Purdue or somebody. They didn't obviously played that well in that game, but they are battle tested. They got a lot of good guards. They can really shoot it. They got some size as well. And then looking at Hofstra, to give you a name, everyone talks about Cruz Davis and Preston Edmeade, but how about 7 foot Silas Sunday? I mean,
Yeah.
that is a name that's just made for March. I love the pride. I love Speedy Claxton out in Hempstead, New York. I think this Hofstra team is very live to win a game against Alabama, possibly upset them. And if God is good, like Aiden Holloway, what he did, I mean, Hofstra's got to win this game, right? I mean, it's just, yeah.
I was hoping you guys would hype up some chaos here because this is a regional final that will be played in Chicago where I live. So I was hoping we could get some of these big brands out, maybe get some cheaper tickets at the United Center for the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. But it sounds like you're liking chaos on the 4-5 line and you still like Michigan and Iowa State to get to the Elite Eight. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, the bottom half of this bracket here, I think there's some. I mean, we don't know who's going to play Tennessee tonight. The winner of SMU and Miami of Ohio will play Tennessee. I love this Virginia team. I really think Ryan Odom in his first year. This is not your dad's Virginia's team that everyone remembers. A couple years ago they held up signs where it's like the Virginia Cavaliers have not scored since the 9:02 mark in the first half. That's not this Virginia team. They want to play fast. They can really score. They can really shoot it. Jakari White is a sniper. The transfer. Malik Thomas, another transfer. He can really shot create. I watched their game against Duke the other night, and Duke played some phenomenal defense, and it just didn't really matter. Like, Virginia was hitting tough shots. They can really score the basketball. I mean, the Cavaliers make 10 threes a game on average. They take threes and they make threes. So, you're going to get at least 30 points a game behind the three-point line from this Virginia team. DeRitter is a really talented freshman. We talk about the freshmen around the country. Virginia has a really talented freshman in DeRitter. Onyensu, I think, is the best shot blocker in the country. Easily the best shot blocker in the ACC. He had 9 blocks against Duke. He had 8 blocks against NC State. He had 4 blocks against Miami. 21 blocks in a 3-game span is just silly to me. I don't know how it's even possible. But he's an unbelievable rim protector. So I think Virginia has all the makings of a team that can make a second weekend run. But Iowa State, again, they just kind of do everything well besides shoot free throws. This Iowa State team, it feels like they have to eventually break through to an Elite Eight. TJ Otzelberg has a really talented team. They have senior guards in Lipsy, Momcilovic. They have the senior in Joshua Jefferson, who's one of the top players in the Big 12, one of the best conferences in the country. So I do think ultimately it is Iowa State that gets to that regional final against Michigan. But I think Virginia's, really, really talented and really, really well coached with Ryan Odom. I don't think there's really much else here. I know Tennessee, they've had some inconsistencies, which led them to the 6th line. With Jacoby Gillespie, he's really good, and they have a talented freshman as well, and Nate Ament. Rick Barnes, you have to always take the Volunteers seriously. I just don't love this Vols team, if I'm being quite honest with you. And then Kentucky they don't play a lick of defense either. I mean, teams scored 90 on them like it's yesterday's news. It doesn't even matter. I mean, Kentucky super, super inconsistent in what was overall a pretty inconsistent SEC this year. A lot of SEC teams that were just kind of like Jekyll and Hyde. So I think ultimately Iowa State is not going to have any issues in this bottom half.
Yeah, I think Virginia is my team in this bottom half. I think people are just sleeping on this Cavaliers team because we're so accustomed to the slow, methodical style that past Virginia teams with Bennett as their coach have done in years past. But this is not your typical Virginia team. They can get up and down the floor. They got shooters left and right. And what reminds me of Onanesu, I can't pronounce his name, but Onanesu. Yeah. I'm doing my best here. And that is Diakite. And that team, obviously, we know they were able to cut down the nets. He hit that big buzzer beater shot. I think it was against Purdue, maybe.
Purdue,
yeah. See, it's early, but still, the ball knowledge is still there. So I like this.
Game, yeah.
Yeah, I like this Virginia team. I don't trust Iowa State. I know they have all the makings, but as you mentioned, Mike, free throw shooting. You get in a close game, you can't hit free throws. It's gonna come back to haunt you in some way or fashion. It kind of reminds me of this Miami, Ohio team. One of their flaws is free throw shooting, and in that UMass game, it really came to form, and it finally bit bit them in the butt. So I like Virginia to get out of this bottom half. That's who I would trust the most. And that Kentucky team, I would love to see them lose to Sasha and company. Hammond as well. I really like the Broncos of Santa Clara to win that game.
The Kentucky fans are scared. They saw a Bulgarian shooter, a
Yeah.
white guy. They're like, "Oh my God, is this
Not
Golke
again.
again?
Yep.
Is this Doug Eder?" They do not want to see him.
I'm with you. I mean, Santa Clara's got some dudes, man. They got a talented freshman. Alan Graves is going to be a future NBA player. I think he'll come back to school. But Santa Clara, by the way, has not been to the tournament since Steve Nash was. I mean, it's unbelievable. So Santa Clara, an awesome story. Another double-digit seed. I think they're actually the best 10 seed. I think Missouri obviously is playing at home. So they're maybe the most live 10 seed. But I think Santa Clara is like the best of the 10 seeds because overall this is a really bad bubble. I think A&M really struggled on the stretch. They couldn't even win one game in the SEC tournament. Missouri kind of dropped some games down the stretch there. UCF was like kind of sputtering to the end. They lost 3 in a row to end the regular season. I think Santa Clara is like they're of the 10 seeds, they're playing the best basketball right now. They beat St. Mary's and they almost beat Gonzaga. I think Santa Clara's got some actual talent there with Sasha, as you mentioned. He can really shoot it. Kentucky's so inconsistent, but obviously Kentucky has the $1 million roster in NIL, and Santa Clara is just Santa Clara. So it would be a massive upset in that regard. But the 7-10. Don't look past the Broncos.
And who do you guys have here as your last team in the Final Four?
To me, this is a Michigan region. I can't really sell myself on anyone else besides Michigan. I'm trying to. I just can't really see it here. I think if they were to run into a Virginia or an Iowa State, I think Iowa State, like you mentioned, the free throw shooting, they're going to leave too many points at the stripe against an awesome Michigan Wolverines team with Dusty May. In Bama and Texas Tech, I actually do have Texas Tech advancing past Hofstra, so I did pick Hofstra over Alabama. I'm able to sleep well at night even if they don't win that game because I think Texas Tech comes out and gets to the Sweet 16. I think everyone's down on the Red Raiders right now, but I really love this Grant McCasland Red Raiders team. Even without JT Toppin, they were able to go into Ames, Iowa, and beat the Cyclones team who's in this region. They're the 2 seed in this region, so I think they can beat a Bama team who's hobbled and possibly Hofstra as well. I do think Michigan ultimately beats Texas Tech in a rematch of that 2019 Elite Eight. So I think they're able to once again beat them in the Sweet 16 and get to the Elite Eight in Chicago. And I think ultimately Michigan comes out of this region quite comfortably.
Yeah, I agree. I got Michigan versus Akron in the top half of the Sweet 16. I'll sleep well at night with John Gross and company and my Zips. They're my Cinderella this year. Hopefully the slipper will still fit. But I like Michigan to get back to a Final Four bottom half. I got Iowa State versus Virginia, and I like Virginia to get to an Elite Eight. I think Virginia will give Michigan all they can handle, a good run for their money. But it's Michigan's region to lose. They got the easiest draw of the 4 number 1 seeds. I think there's just too much there. Dusty May, obviously, he's been to a Final Four. I think he'll have a little more success in this year's Final Four than he did at Florida Atlantic. Shout out to my Aztecs of San Diego State as well. But there's just too much there with Michigan. They've been consistent all year, too. It's not like they just kind of Florida's path, like kind of built their way to a number 1 seed. They've been the dominant team all year long. What they did out in Vegas early in the non-conference play was absolutely phenomenal. I'm all in on the Wolverines getting back to a Final Four.
Before we get to the championship picks, I want you guys to call your shot. Give me a player, a coach, a student manager, a cheerleader, someone that no one's talking about right now that you think could end up being the story of the weekend by the time we're done.
Look, I don't know if Furman's going to beat UConn or not. They're a 15 seed, but I think they have a freshman, Alex Wilkins, who's averaging just a hair under 18 a game, who really shot the ball really well in the SoCon tournament. I know you watched it, Adam. Asa Thomas can also score. They got the Bowser brothers. Furman's got some dudes. Bob Ritchie's been in the tournament before. They upset Virginia a couple years ago. So maybe Alex Wilkins, who's a freshman, they could possibly know his name. But I'm sticking with Hofstra. I think if you don't know Cruz Davis and Preston Edmead's name by now, you're potentially going to know their name by Friday, I believe, when they play Alabama. I think you're going to see an interesting, really good game between 2 explosive teams with explosive guards. And I think you're going to be able to see Preston Edmead and Cruz Davis kind of match what LeBaron Thylon gives Alabama and Nate Oates. So I think those 2 guards for Hofstra. Hofstra's not been in the tournament in a long time. They were going to go in COVID when they won the CAA, but obviously the COVID canceled the NCAA tournament. They have not been in over 20 years. I think Hofstra, you're going to see their 2 guards really come to play.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me. I'm just going to stick with High Point here. I think Terry Anderson and company Flynn Kleiman, they can just really get after it. And if the upsets are going to happen, and I think it would be the most electric one just because of how the game I see going in this one against Wisconsin. I think Terry Anderson's the name that you're going to hear a lot on that day if they High Point is fortunate enough to win. And Flynn Kleiman, teams are going to want him coaching somewhere else after this weekend, in my opinion. I think High Point is definitely live to win this game because we saw Wisconsin. I mean, I saw them out in Oregon. I watched that game. They can lose to anybody on any given night. No shade, Theo. No shade. But
That's a terrible Oregon team.
yeah.
Terrible. But yeah, so let's get back to our Final Four. Who's playing in the national title game? Who's winning? And maybe as a bonus, who's getting Jim Nance's tie after the game?
Oh, okay. So I have Duke against Houston once again in the Final Four, just like last year. I do think Duke ultimately gets their revenge and gets past Houston this year. Houston has a couple freshmen. Last year Houston was so battle tested and had a lot of seniors, and they do this year too. But I think I think Duke brought back a lot of that experience as well. A lot of those guys that Duke has this year are on that team that lost in the Final Four last year to Houston. I think Duke gets past the Cougars, and I think you see Arizona and Michigan in a whale of a game. Can Arizona shoot the three ball well? Can Michigan limit the turnovers? I think Michigan ultimately gets past Arizona, and you see a rematch of the game in Washington, D.C. between Michigan and Duke. And I do have the Michigan Wolverines cutting down the nets with Dusty May and Yaxel Lendeborg and Elliot Cadeau and Ade Mara.
Yeah, I have the same Final Four, so if you're listening to this at home, there's no shot any of these four teams are going to a Final Four. I got Duke over Houston in that first game, and then on the other side, I got Michigan over Arizona, so we got another Duke-Michigan national title game, a rematch from middle of February out in D.C. What a game that was between these two teams. I think Duke is able to win this one and cut down the nets for John Shire. I know they've had injury concerns, but I do think Boozer's going to shine bright when it matters most. Duke has played, I think, the best defense that I've seen of some of these top teams. I think Shire's actually done a really good job with this year's team, and I think he probably learned. I hope he did, since they're my national title pick. I think he learned a lot from last year's Final Four and how they choked that game against Houston down the stretch. I think they're going to overcome it. Good storyline there. I think Duke's able to get back and win it all. And I think, Theo, you might have mentioned this the other day, is they have success in Indy. They've won national titles there before.
Yeah, I think the last two times when they beat Butler and they beat Wisconsin, both games were in Indy. I took Duke to win as well. This team, they have a lot of the same ingredients as the team that beat Wisconsin, but it's just a more modernized version. Like Boozer's kind of like what your modern day Jahlil Okafor would be, and then they just throw all these wings at you that can shoot. They can't all be called on the same day because they have too many of them with Isaiah Evans and Dame Sarr. It's just guy after guy after guy. Caleb Foster. Other Boozer. They good down low with Gongba, Malik Brown. So I'm taking Duke as well. Hopefully John Shire learned from last year. Hate to pick Duke. Never like to do it, but I like to be right. So that's where we're going.
If you're a Siena fan, you're loving what you're hearing right now.
Yes.
Just going to say that.
Man, if you're Gavin Doty and the Siena Saints, you're saying, okay,
yeah,
all the disrespect in the world to come to Siena.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
with you,
right.
Duke. By the way, real quick on Duke. Cam Boozer has not lost the last game of the season since he was in 6th grade. So, again, just a bona fide winner. Doesn't really lose in these high leverage situations. So, if Duke is able to get back to a Final Four and a national championship, maybe we'll have a storyline where Cam Boozer just keeps winning.
All right, well, those are our picks. We are the gurus. We'll be back all tournament long. Like, comment, subscribe. If you already listened, when you go to sleep tonight, just stream our podcast on mute. Run those streams up. But yeah, appreciate everybody listening. Shout out to everyone in the Sickos chat, and this is March.